She was 12 years old. No weapon. No phone. No one around to help her. And the man who took her believed he had complete control. But what happened next is the reason she is alive today. This is not a story about strength. It's not about fighting back. And it's not about luck. It is about how a young girl used her mind, not force, to outsmart a kidnapper who never saw it coming. This documentary is based on a real interview. Names have been changed for privacy. Details are presented responsibly. And by the end of this story, you'll understand how calm thinking saved a life, and why her choices still surprise experts today. Stay with us. Before fear entered her life, her world was small and ordinary. School in the morning. Homework in the afternoon. Helping her mother in the evening. She lived in a quiet neighborhood where people greeted each other by name. The kind of place where doors weren't always locked, and danger felt distant as something that happened somewhere else. That afternoon, she walked home the same route she had taken hundreds of times before. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt different. And that's what made it dangerous. Because most real-life threats don't announce themselves, they arrive quietly. It happened in seconds. A voice behind her, calm, friendly. He asked a simple question, something ordinary. Something harmless. She answered without thinking. But then, something felt off. Not fear yet. Just discomfort. Her instincts noticed details her mind hadn't processed. The way he stood too close, the way he repeated her name. The way his smile never reached his eyes. She would later say this was the moment everything slowed down, because while panic wanted to take over, her thinking didn't stop. And that mattered. She was separated from the street faster than she understood what was happening. There was no shouting, no dramatic struggle, just a deep, chilling confusion, and a powerful wave of fear. But here's the critical detail. The one that would later save her. She didn't scream, not because she couldn't, but because she made a conscious choice not to. In that split second, something inside her mind just clicked. She knew, instinctively, that fear would make her predictable, but calm would make her dangerous, at least to him. Now, at this point, many of us would imagine heroics. We think of fighting back, of trying to run, of resisting with all our might. But real-life survival doesn't always look brave in the way we see in movies. Sometimes, survival looks intelligent. And that's exactly what she was. She realized something absolutely critical. He wanted control. He expected her to be terrified. Expected silence and submission. So, she decided to give him something completely different. She gave him a conversation. She started speaking to him calmly. She asked harmless, simple questions. She responded to him slowly, deliberately, and without him even realizing it. He made his first and most critical mistake. He completely underestimated her. In later interviews, investigators would explain this phenomenon very clearly. Criminals often operate on a set of dangerous assumptions. They assume that children will panic. They assume that intense fear shuts down all rational thinking. And they assume that silence automatically equals obedience. But she did something incredibly rare. She observed. She started to notice how often he would look away when he was speaking. She noticed how he would correct himself, catching his own lies mid-sentence. She paid attention to how small, seemingly insignificant lies would just slip out accidentally. She wasn't just passively listening to him talk. She was actively collecting information. Every word, every glance, every nervous twitch was a piece of a puzzle she was assembling in her mind. This wasn't just a scared little girl in a car. This was a strategist at work, gathering intelligence under the most extreme pressure imaginable. And what she was gathering wasn't just random details. She was building a psychological profile of her captor. She was learning what made him tick. This is a tactic that law enforcement and psychologists call active listening for survival. It's about more than just hearing words. It's about understanding the person behind them. She wasn't looking for a weapon to fight with. She was looking for a weakness in his mind, a crack in his confidence, and she was finding them, one by one. He expected a victim. What he got was a student of human behavior. He thought he was in complete control of the situation, but the power dynamic was slowly, subtly shifting. She was turning his own assumptions against him. Every calm response she gave him broke his script. Every question she asked forced him to think, to deviate from his plan. He was the one who had taken her, but she was the one who was beginning to control the narrative. She was disarming him, not with force, but with her mind. This ability to stay calm and think clearly under unimaginable stress is something psychologists call cognitive resilience. It's the mental equivalent of being physically tough. It's the ability to manage fear instead of letting fear manage you, and she had it in abundance. While he was focused on the physical act of the crime, she was engaged in a mental battle, and in this battle, she was the one with the superior strategy. Her observations paid off. The details she collected, the small lies, the places he mentioned, the way he spoke, they weren't just random facts. They became the clues that would eventually lead to her rescue, when she finally had the chance to share what she knew. She didn't just give a description of a scary man, she provided a detailed intelligence report. She gave investigators the exact pieces of the puzzle they needed. She had turned her terrifying ordeal into a data-gathering mission. This story isn't just about a crime, it's a profound lesson in survival and the incredible power of the human mind. It teaches us that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to stay calm, to think, and to observe. It reminds us that in the darkest of moments, our greatest weapon isn't our fists, but our intellect. She didn't just survive her abductor, she outsmarted him. And in doing so, she rewrote the definition of what it means to be a survivor. The story of her survival is often told with a focus on the escape, the dramatic climax, but the real story, the one that holds the most powerful lesson, began long before she was free. It started in the silence, in the darkness. While she was trapped, instead of succumbing to despair, she did something truly extraordinary. She began to memorize details, not the obvious ones, like the layout of the room. No, she memorized the subtle, almost invisible things. She cataloged the sounds from outside, the specific rumble of a truck that passed by every morning, the distant bark of a particular dog, the pattern of birdsong at dusk. She noted the subtle changes in light, how a sliver of sun would hit a certain spot on the wall at the same time each afternoon, marking the passage of the day. She measured time not in hours, but in the rhythm of her captor's movements, the predictable creak of the floorboards above. She turned these observations into a mental inventory, repeating them over and over in her mind, like the lyrics to a song she couldn't afford to forget. Why? Because she understood a fundamental truth that many of us miss in moments of crisis. She knew that if she survived, her memory would be the evidence that brought him to justice. Her detailed observations would be the key, and if she didn't survive, her memory would still matter. It would be the story told, the puzzle pieced together. The only thing left of her that could speak the truth. Her memory was her weapon, her legacy, and her anchor to reality. This is a crucial lesson. Opportunities for survival, for escape, for change, don't always announce themselves with a loud bang. They don't arrive like a cavalry charge. More often than not, they whisper. They hide in the mundane, in the everyday, a momentary distraction, a slight deviation from a rigid routine, a small, almost imperceptible lapse in his attention. These were the cracks in the wall of her prison, and she was watching for every single one. She didn't rush, she didn't panic, she waited. Patience wasn't passive for her, it was an active strategy. Every day she waited was another day she was alive, another day she could gather more information. Another day for the perfect, fleeting opportunity to present itself. Waiting kept her alive, and it kept her mind sharp. She understood that a premature, desperate attempt would be her last. So she observed, she cataloged, she waited. And then? The moment finally came. It wasn't a grand, dramatic opening. It was small, a dropped set of keys. A moment of frustration on his part, a break in his usual, menacing focus. And in that split second, she didn't react with the fear or rage he expected. She didn't scream or fight. She acted strategically. She deployed the most unexpected weapon in her arsenal. Instead of doing what he anticipated, she did something that completely confused him. She spoke his name, calmly. Clearly, just his name. That simple act shattered the entire power dynamic. In that moment, he wasn't just a monster and she a victim. He was a man with a name, and she was a person who knew it. He suddenly realized she wasn't just a terrified captive, paralyzed by fear. She was aware, she was observant, she was thinking. And to a man like him, that awareness was the most dangerous thing in the world. This part of the story is so often misunderstood, romanticized into something it wasn't. There was no dramatic chase through the woods. There was no cinematic hand-to-hand fight scene where she miraculously overpowers him. The reality was far more intelligent and far more courageous. It was about perfect timing. It was about cold, calculated thinking under unimaginable pressure. And it was about having the courage to move, to act, in the one precise moment when it mattered most. She didn't escape by overpowering him physically. She escaped by slipping through the tiny gap his own arrogance and momentary confusion had created. Her freedom wasn't won with fists, but with her mind. It's a powerful reminder that our greatest strength isn't always our physical power, but our ability to see, to listen, and to think when everyone expects us to break. When help arrived, she didn't collapse. She spoke, she described, she remembered, she explained. And that stunned everyone, because trauma often silences people. But she had prepared for this moment without knowing it. Years later, during a recorded interview, she said something unforgettable. "I didn't feel brave. I felt focused." That sentence became the heart of this story, because bravery fades. Focus saves lives. Psychologists later studied her case. They highlighted 3 key survival behaviors: emotional regulation, situational awareness, strategic communication. None of these require strength, only presence of mind. This story isn't told to create fear, it's told to create understanding. Danger doesn't always look violent. Survival doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes, survival looks like thinking clearly when everything else tells you not to. If there's one lesson from this story, it's this: your mind is your greatest defense. Stay aware, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the power of calm thinking. She survived because she outsmarted someone who never thought she could. And that is why her story deserves to be told.